Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning. This is your host, Lorraine Neidhart, and you have reached Venus Unplugged. And what we do here, Venus Unplugged, is we talk about all things Venusian, the archetype, beauty, relationships, myth, dream. Those are all the things that we look at. So what I'm just finishing up here, and I have to say that, these are just kind of cliff notes. It would be for those that are interested in kind of recreating the Dionysian myth at the Villa of Mysteries. We can certainly do this through our imagination. You need to read the myth of Ariadne and Dionysus. And if you can, read the book Women's Dionysian Initiations, The Villa of Mysteries in Pompeii by Linda Ferris David. That's FIERZ-DAVID. And, other resources. Because this myth is as relative to the modern woman's psyche as it is to anything else. In Pompeii, when the Villa of Mysteries was discovered, it was under ash from volcanoes, and it was just last century it was discovered. They thought the initiation chamber was a bridal chamber because it appeared as if. But as you begin to know more about mythology and look at this, you begin to realize that no, well, it's a bride, I think, of the sacred marriage within the self, but it really is an initiation for a woman and death. Where is she in her life? These different frescoes. And each time you go through this initiation, of course, you're going to come up with a different insight. So I can just touch on this briefly. I hope what I do touch is a passion in your own being, and you go and you explore or imagine or fight against, because that's just as important as, knowing and not knowing, to bring these ancient images forth, or these ancient experiences forth, because we're living them out anyway. We just don't have a content for them. So it's happening in our life. This is kind of a midlife crisis. The children are grown, the husband is the husband, the wife is the wife, whatever is going on in one life. And at one point we then begin to, what does this all mean? So we've working on the ninth and the 10th scenes, and what I will be doing is just reading from the book so you can get a sense of the god Dionysus is the god of ecstasy. And we would see that as loss of meaning, because we're longing for that ecstasy. We're longing for that ecstatic moment. Now, so often we think that ecstatic moment is in, Bergdorf's or shopping or getting drunk or, having Kundalini experiences. I don't know. We come up with all sorts of things and temptations. But what this is about is that call towards the ecstasy, but being contained, because the Villa of Mysteries, this initiation connected the woman deeply to her own feminine values, completely and utterly different than who she was identified with in the culture, as a mother, as a wife, as a professional, whatever it is. This initiation, besides scaring the shit out of you completely, but that's good, because we don't need that. We need to make gold out of that, right? Has one begin to recognize, well, who am I and what am I about? We can just drop dead and say, well, I worked for this, or these are my children. No, they're going to ask you what you did with your life. And this is part of this preparation to at least begin to discover. Death isn't something that we think about or deal with the last 20 minutes. It's ever present. We need to prepare the same way we prepare for everything else. And these gave these women a glimpse into the ecstasy, a glimpse into their own deep feminine values based on themselves. So it's very, very different than any other of the initiation rites. Well, and the same is true of the Eleusinian mysteries. The Eleusinian mysteries in Greece, right? That was the initiate was learning to die unto themselves and have this relationship, because the body is left here, but the soul and the spirit we still have the relationship with. And that's what they experience. So in the 9th and 10th scenes, and also on Pinterest, I think I put it up in the Jungian Woman on my Pinterest board. I found a really clear little video that goes through the Villa of Mysteries, and you can really see the images. And that, of course, becomes much more alive when you can see what stages. So this is the 9th and 10th scene. So here, what she writes is, we have now arrived at the end of the way of initiation, which is portrayed with the frescoes of the Villa of Mystery. After the 8th scene, the window on the long outer walls opens, daylight penetrates the room, the initiated one is again restored to ordinary life. It is generally interpreted in this way by scholars, and certainly this fits. Yet, then the conclusion is drawn that the 9th and 10th scenes, that's interesting, scenes, I guess they are seeds too, Jungian truths, okay, have no further significance. It is supposed that these pictures are purely for decoration and represent scenes from the lives of the ladies who lived in the villa. The lady in the 10th scene is described as the Domina, Domina, because it is thought that this is a portrait of the lady of the house, like others which have been found in other houses of antiquity. Wrong. No, that's not what it means. Okay. These trains of thought start from a very subjective hypothesis that the Orphic initiation might have had a certain significance, but that, after all, ordinary life is entirely meaningless. I don't think so. This is the prejudice that does not belong to those who are educated, and on the contrary, there are endless numbers of people, even today, who resign themselves to meaninglessness in an ordinary daily life. Even at a fairly early age, they have not known for a long time that luck is always where they are not. At bottom, this conviction springs from the fact that these people feel themselves to be terribly boring and tedious. We're going to change that. They have no confidence in themselves, and they make nothing of their gifts which have been given to them. Clearly, if they had other gifts, for example, like Mr. Y or Mrs. X or Miss X, they would do something else again. Then naturally, they would be highly interesting. But since they are so insignificant, ordinary life can certainly not be other than insignificant too. So, like, if you're feeling insignificant, get thyself to the mystery, because it's just not true. That's a trap. And since we have the continuation to infinity of soul and spirit, and the body we leave here, but the rest keeps on going. It's like this is part of what enlivens, or when we go on a shamanistic journey, or whatever it is that we're searching for, is always, that's why, addiction and conscious spirituality have or ecstasy actually have so much in common. You want that experience. But if you have it with a drug, you don't remember, and that's a drag. I mean, the world where you acted out, of course, remembers. And the arresting officer remembers what you did. But that's why when we can recreate, which is also what dreams are about, their initiation rites. So to this one can only say that, of course, all people are very significant. Only the goals which they set forth themselves have significance. If, for example, a scholar sees the goal to become educated and perhaps achieves a certain distinction, but every evening when he looks up from his work, he sits or sees or experiences an insignificant man in surroundings which means nothing to him. That's sad. But when the soul arises as a goal, when the soul, your soul, arises as a goal, however, one's commonality and ordinary life become meaningful. One need no longer wait for the actor's opportunity to play a shining role in the drama of choice, or wait for Zeus himself to rain down upon the roof in a shower of gold. The self, that's with a capital S, the self is the remedy which makes the whole of life meaningful. Accordingly, the representations of ordinary life in the Villa of Mysteries are naturally meaningful too. It cannot be otherwise. For the people to whom we owe the fresco series did not contrive these pictures by conscious design. The representations are the result of the primordial experience that befell them in this house. And even now, it lends a wonderful, fascinating atmosphere. The last two scenes, with all their simplicity, are highly animated. It will surely reward us, therefore, to look at them with reference to their meaning. We shall soon see the end of the initiation certainly does not signify a break. The initiate is now removed from either the experience that she has just had or from the world. On the contrary, she is reinstated to them anew through the same flow of psychic life that bore her through the initiation. That's very important. It's like being twice born. You come out. You're changed from within. And that's what this... So they go through the initiation in the last two scenes. The anthropologists, and they thought that, well, this is, okay, they went to that and then they finished and we're going to go through the end of the tour. But it's not true. Everything does mean something. Nothing is ever meaningless. It's meaningless to you because either you don't want to look or don't know how to look or don't know the question to ask. So in the 9th scene shows a lady who is in the process of having her hair dressed by a maid. An Eros figure, Cupid, holds a mirror for that purpose, but only the maid looks into it, while the lady gazes thoughtfully into the distance. A second Eros figure behind her looks amiable and sweetly looks on. This picture takes up the still unsolved problem of the 8th scene, namely the problem of the initiate's hair, which was disheveled. Okay, come on, Lorraine. And loose, and therefore had to be just dressed. So I think that's in the 4th and 5th scene. It's just like hairs all over the place. As we have already seen, the hair is a symbol of the contents of the head. That is, for all thoughts and ideas that together make up a personal consciousness. How these contents of consciousness were really procured is disclosed in the 8th scene, as well as prepositions and allusions were mixed up with these contexts. However, now all the contents of the hair must be put in order in accordance with the new point of view that follows from directing one's goal towards the self. And hair is always very important. So often, when a person gets divorced or goes through some type of worldly initiation, they're going to cut their hair, they're going to color it, they're going to change it, or they're going to let it grow gray and wild. Hair is also fantasies. What's being born out of our head. So here we have, in the last scenes, the woman's hair is wild, and now it needs to be contained, reordered. The lady, whom we perhaps describe as a symbol for the ego personality, looks calmly into the world. She takes up the impression that comes to her from out there. The ordering of the conscious content follows from the fact that something in her, embodied in the maid, glances at the same time into the mirror of the Eros figure. This little winged spirit is surely to be understood as a messenger from the unconscious who brings to the lady her inner reactions to outer impressions. Objective observation is completed through the consideration of the subjective emotions. What happens is also regarded as a mirror of one's own being. The other little Eros figure represents the quieted Eros of the initiated. So there's the reflection image, and then there's the Eros relationship of knowing. And when one knows, or one has, that's Gnostic knowing, you don't have a lot to say. You know. And that knowing is kind of complete. Or you know, but you don't know because you can't explain it. You just know down deep something has just changed. When one directs one's goals towards the self, the principle of relatedness functions more easily. Relationships to people and things no longer taken so personally. They moderate themselves, since they also becomes a means to self-knowledge. You don't take it personally. See it for what it is. The difference between outer happenings and inner experience is still only a relative one. Life becomes a dream, and the dream becomes life. For both are manifestations of the self. Consciousness is set in order as to have recognized as only something relative, dependent on outer circumstances and inner influences. It has been included in the process of becoming a self. It can always change again, and so must be set in order anew every day with calm impartiality. Just as one hair must be newly dressed every day. That's an interesting image. I remember as a kid, we always had to brush our hair like 100 times or something. Hurt. But I didn't realize it's kind of like combing out the fantasies or the day to go into the dreaming. So she consciously has got to get a new order. She's got to get a new do, a new coif, a new containment for those fantasies so that she could do something with them, right? So our hair is newly dressed every day. In this regard, this or that content can fall away and days are obsolete and a new content can develop in its place. So if we don't contain ourselves, something's going to take place. It always does. So the human being can no longer boast of omnipotence or indisputable truth. What was true yesterday may no longer be true tomorrow. Only the goal is always true, about which the human being resolves as a person perpetually in process. It is nice that this condition of relative consciousness, or one might also say of continued coming to consciousness, is represented in the ninth scene of the fresco series as so friendly and so quiet a condition, as a composure. You don't see a lot of composed people these days, which results from confining oneself to immediate circumstances and nothing beyond it. You stay contained. You stay quiet. You introvert until you can kind of hold that all together. When this composure has been achieved, which could also be through your meditations, right? Then entirely ordinary life can become interesting. It is indeed new every day, and the individual can take part in every day in a new way. So here she has it. If one goes from the ninth scene of the initiation hall of the Villa of Mystery, one arrives at the great door of the front wall, which leads out to a terrace. So at this great door, it's a door, it's a threshold, it leads out, but it also has the initiate recognize that something is completely different. And she begins to see life as more meaningful, as if in a dream, in the depth of this dream. And she also begins to recognize and worship the spirit of a place, which is an interesting concept. You know, to come home and go like, I love my home, I love my hearth, or I love the garden or the park or where I work, or, you know, the love of the spirit of the place. So the figure of this woman is the only one among the 29 figures of the initiation hall, which is turned towards the back wall, towards the central picture of Dionysus and Ariadne. The Damnia is turned towards this important place of interest and so is connected with its opposite. Life is always a tension of the opposites. The inner marriage is an integration of the tension of the opposites. We don't choose one over the other. They're always present. So this representation leads me to think that the so-called Damnena, who they thought was the woman, very probably to be interpreted as the embodiment of the remembrance itself, which was the most meaningful human faculty of the Orphic belief system. This was really the most important thing in the figure that the participant in the mystery received from the Orphic initiation. Namely, she now had something she could always remember. In the dramatic course of this initiation, she has come to know how human life passes to death, over beyond death as a way between height and depth, danger and help, a way which can be trodden according to the divine pattern towards a divine goal. The human being can remember, is no longer given over to blind fate. She has indeed seen the eternal symbols, which in all conditions of life mediate the right demeanor and lead meaning to all events. She has drunk the sweet milk that gushes from the breast of the Great Mother. She has heard the music of the spheres. That actually happened to me twice as a young initiate, because I knew it was a form of ecstasy, but it wasn't until years later that I found out what it really was. But it's pretty trippy, the music of the spheres. Especially when you don't know, you're not looking for it, and then it just starts playing itself out. So this here, she begins to understand the events of life, the compassion, the milk of the Great Mother, which would also be the Milky Way. So all this is perpetual reality from the person who remembers it. The picture of the so-called Damnina whether or not it represents the mistress of the house, appears so dominating to me because it embodies this remembrance. The same is true for modern people. In the course of inner development, once the world of archetypal images has arisen in the dramatic moving inner drama, individuals need never again lose connection. What if and what it, and they do not forget their most valuable experiences, and with that, themselves. So this is experienced by modern people in an inner drama corresponding to the initiation of the Villa of Mysteries is only one cycle of this continuous circular motion of the psyche, which, constantly changing, nevertheless touches on new levels, the same stations again and again. Whoever remembers this can always find again the staff and the support in the vicissitudes of life. The rhythm of the unconscious psyche carries such people, becomes alive for them, like the beat of the cymbals in the upraised hands of the figure of light, the goal around which they resolve. In this sense, memory is just as important for modern people as it was for the ancient Orphic oracles, and also, for example, for Plato. Psychologically speaking, it signifies a concentration upon the essential in connection with everything that happens. This indeed is not a matter of course. It requires experience, not to let oneself be confused or diverted, if I dare say so, by the chaos and stuff that will surround all shapes of life. It requires the gift of remembrance to enable one to seize the basic form and the outer and inner happenings, so one can understand the play and participate in it. The concentration upon the essential is expressed in the 10th scene of the fresco series by Alternatives, and it's turned towards the holy, mystery-filled sphere of the inner world. So that's also what happens when you write down your dreams. It's a remembrance. It's an honoring. I've had this experience. I've been touched by the sacred. I can write it down, dear diary, dear dream diary. So that's what this tells us all about. So when we go into the 10th and final, what begins to happen is, yes, the woman goes back into ordinary life, but with an extraordinary experience of what life means to her, and a deep feminine knowing, not what the culture told us the feminine is, not what our mothers told us, or fathers told us, or life told us, but truly it is a completely different set of instincts. Each feminine is different, but we know it. It's kind of like we know that we know, but we don't know how we know. So that's what part of this is about. So, and this also happens, it's the same system that happens when you do a Jungian analysis, the same kind of states of consciousness happen, the same states of consciousness happen in alchemy. We go through all these different scenes, and we come out and we look at the world as never before. Or so often, we can't even explain it. But if you meet another who knows, there's nothing to be said. You know that they know, that they've been there. And that builds that trust. And people who there's an old saying, those who say don't know and those who know don't say. So that's what begins to happen. So my wish for all of you is to remember what was dismembered. And gift yourself by reading about these myths and this Villa of Mystery, or go to Pompeii. Go live it out. Go have it. Because this is all preparing us for what is eternal. The soul and the self are eternal. So many blessings, and I'm going to put this up on Pinterest and where else? Pinterest and Facebook and LorraineNighthawk.com. Okay, bye-bye.
Progressive presents Mindfulness with Flow.
You are a mighty fortress of supreme knowledge. Progressive Direct has not only revealed their rates, but those of their competitors. If you were any more in the know, you would be drowning in, the know.
Compare Progressive Direct rates with competitors' rates, because knowledge is power. Visit Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy. Vary based on how you buy. Vary based on how you buy. Vary based on how you buy.